Well, I went down, things changing for me.
John was walking home from AA meeting he had gone to himself. He was trying to prove something to his friends, but he hadn't told them yet. The meeting was up at Cindy and James had invited him to, up on Louisiana Avenue, past St. Charles. He had assumed that James was off with Dady since it was Halloween, and she had come to him to ask him a second time to be the bodyguard. He was glad she went with James. It would be safer for her. John was reasonable this time at the meeting. He was only drinking beer now. He got up and confessed and sat down and listened to everybody else. Out on the sidewalk, there were still a few darkly dressed parents out with their little costume kids walking door to door. When he came to James' apartment, he noticed that his desk lamp was still on. He went into the building and knocked on the door. No answer. He went out to the big empty porch and saw a breeze move the curtains in the front window. That meant he hadn't put his window down. He went to check and found it open, and the skinny screen where he weren't even latched. The kid was going to get robbed. He squeezed in the screen and looked around. Nothing looked ransacked. There was a second window in the alley that was open as well. He would close them all before leaving. He sat down at James' giant desk to write him a note about being there. The desk was constructed out of a door to which James had attached those add-on legs you can get at a hardware store. And he had stained the whole thing a sort of cherry walnut. The desk was too tall, so the kid had a bar stool with the back arms as his chair. It felt very weird to John. It made him feel like he was a little boy again at a desk that was too big. There was a little stack of yellow legal paper with writing on each page. Maybe about 30 pages, all in a very neatly printed script. No cursive, in ink. There were a few scratched out words, but not many. There was a pad with a blank lined yellow stationery ready to be written out, and a few blue ink pens. John picked up the written pages to read. The basement door was in the kitchen. You opened it. There was a light switch on the right wall, a square metal electrical box connected to those metal tubes they used to run the hot wires around the unfinished space. There was a long stairwell leading into the basement. There were no walls down there except the outer ones, and all the rafters and floor braces had a slightly uneven cement floor at the bottom. Everything was dusty. Underneath the stairs was a stack of every magazine they had ever received at the house. Look at Life, and Saturday Evening Post, and Mechanic Illustrated, and Popular Science. Some dating back to the 1930s. You would turn left and walk around the furnace and come to the canning room where his grandmother stored all of her canned goods. They had gardened forever, and she canned whatever she could for the winter. Every winter. There were also boxes of things from his father's childhood and young adult life, and boxes of clothes that were never thrown away. The canning room had shelves but no wall, just rafters and floor braces and two wooden step up to slightly higher concrete floor. Where had she gone down there when the fire began? Down for a bottle of canned tomatoes? The story was smoke inhalation. She didn't burn up. The casket was open at the funeral. Why didn't she run up and out? Wouldn't you cough first? He could recall, as a game when he was younger, that he would lock the door at the top of the stairs and make her beg to get let out. He never made her wait long. They would smile at each other when he opened the door for her. Now he dreamt of her screams on the other side of the door. Had he locked it and forgotten her? He hadn't even been there, but he knew somehow this was a mistake. John stacked the manuscript back into his spot and straightened it. He didn't know what to think. He opened the quart of beer and the sack had gone carrying and took a big swig. Maybe he should sit it somewhere else. He wrote on the blank pad. Just stopped to say hi. Your porch was unlocked, so I came in to lock you up. Hope you had fun tonight. John. He would rest for a minute. He moved to James' couch. That was the life. Something nudged him. John opened his eyes to death standing over him. Jesus! He scrambled to his feet, but he was unsteady. It was James in what he looked like a death mask. He grabbed his arm so he wouldn't fall down. Jesus Christ! You did that on purpose! Quiet down. I have neighbors. James hissed at him. It's 3 a.m. John sat back down on the couch. Rubbing his face, he looked around for his beer in the paper sack. It was on the desk by his note. James had handed it to him. I saw your note, James said. Thanks for watching out for my place. I was going to go home, but I fell asleep. James went into the kitchen and came back with 2 glasses and an unopened bottle of wine. He put the glass in the front of John on the coffee table. Wine? John shook his head and filled the glass with his beer. It was warm. James sat on the stool by the desk. So how did it go? John asked. She did real good. She handed me $100 in the taxi coming home. I was bored most of the time. You just stand around and look mean. I couldn't do it, John said. Well, I can go. Want a little poker? I'm wide awake and off tomorrow. John nodded, and James found his deck of cards and a bag of chips to use for money and sat down on the floor with a coffee table between them. They played. James won the first 2 hands, and John won 1. James was nibbling his winnings. You read some of my stuff? James asked. Just the top page. He lied. He dealt. That's real stuff. Yeah. My grandmother. I start and then I try again from another angle. I've got 5 different takes on the same thing. A lot of it is in there. The entire book almost with 5 different beginnings. It's hard to write about the one you loved. She taught me how to play baseball, James said. They played another hand. John was looking sleepy. You had a fire too? James said. You heard that story? Had he told James himself? James nodded. I was at a party, doing dope and higher than a kite, John said. I stumbled over to a guy in the guy's living room and squatted down there. The walls held me up. You know how strong your legs get from jumping on and off that press every day? James nodded. Remember? Yeah, James said. I woke up in the morning in the same position. I could hardly get up. It was 10 in the morning. I stumbled home to find it was gone. The whole building was burnt out shell. Fire tape all over it. My wife and baby were taken away in the morgue. I'm sorry, James said. You know, I have a hell of a lot of regrets. Even a time when we were first together, before the baby. She was as crazy as a loon. We were going to one of Willie's barbecues and she had never met anybody. She spent hours getting ready and came out looking like a whore. I just hugged her and told her she was the best looking streetwalker I have ever seen, trying to make a joke. And she went off to the bathroom crying and took a shower and started getting ready all over again. John was smiling and then tears welled up his eyes. I didn't know how much later that she thought the scar on my wrist was suicide attempt, like a razor blade scars on her wrist. We never talked about it. He looked like this and was ready to pass out. James got up and pulled his floor bedroll from the closet and laid it out beside the hallway door. Helping John over to it, he tried to get him down without hitting his head on the floor. Though has committed fornication, but that was another country, John muttered. And besides, the wench is dead. Then he was out. James understood he had quoted something, but he didn't know what it was. The snoring was loud. James had moved the coffee table and unfolded the couch and turned out the lights. He watched the lights outside as the cars passed. This bed was very empty without Cindy and the baby.